Hello, friends. We'll just give this a few seconds to make sure that we're up and running. And today, the title is The Irish Courts, What Would Jesus Do? A post-Easter message, noting, of course, that there are two different mainline Christian traditions, the Roman Christianity, if you like, and then the Eastern Orthodox tradition, who only just had their Easter last week. But anyway, it's just a loose introduction. We've got a multifaceted presentation today, talk, and thank you for joining us. As you can see, Stephen Manning from Integrity Ireland. But let's ask this fundamental question. And by looking at our very first slide and an analogy about comparing the Irish court system, and of course, those of you that are watching from abroad, more likely than not, your systems operate in a similar way. It just so happens that Ireland is uniquely the right sort of size, the right age as a state, and has the right mix of corrupt politicians and senior civil servants and office holders to make it an almost perfect example of how not to run a democratic country honestly in this day and age. But just to bring this up, guys, it's very simple. It's an analogy. Imagine yourself in a sports team, asking yourself, are you expecting a win in the Irish courts? And this is an advisory to everybody out there. There you see on the right-hand side, the criminality in the Irish courts book, which names 100 officials and office holders, including over 40 judges, many of them senior judges, including the Chief Justice himself, in active criminal activity, and all of the tricks and rule breakings and unconstitutional acts that they deploy to protect themselves and the nefarious lifestyles that they live. But you've got to think about this as if you're let's say a soccer team, okay? So you're expecting a win in the Irish courts. When they own the stadium, pay the security, bribe the referees, and where the goalposts are on wheels, and where anyone who dissents can be sent off without response, then the only win that can be envisaged is to stop playing and funding the rigged game, to call out the crooks, the liars, and the cheats who control it, and to inform as many other players and teams of how the diabolical game really works. Remember, every single one of us who continues to play their diabolical game in knowledge that it is rigged is complicit in the outcome. Now, this might seem a bit of a harsh indictment, to use an appropriate term, guys, a harsh indictment on everybody who's been fighting through the courts for justice, because basically that's the only system we've got, isn't it? Or is it? Now, I'm raising this, it's more like a philosophical question today, guys, although it's rooted in reality. Are the courts the only authorities we can go to? Because it's strange, isn't it? We're told, right, you have to live in this system that that is the elites, have created to serve themselves and to service themselves. And if they do anything wrong, then we're expected to go back to the very same people that they've appointed in Ireland. Anyway, the judges are politically appointed in Ireland, guys. It's the first breach of the Bangalore Principles, the international rules for judges. But Irish judges are politically appointed. It makes a nonsense of the concept of separation of powers and so on. And of course, they're going to do what is going to be in their own self-interests, apart from the fact that the legal profession, after the CEOs of international corporations, contains the highest numbers of sociopaths and psychopaths in any of the professions, which is where we get our judges from. So you start adding two and two together and you realize, all right, politically appointed sociopaths and psychopaths, not really the best basis upon which to be investing your trust and confidence that you're going to be treated wisely, judicially, or fairly, right? So the point here is, if you were a team, why would you bother playing in a game if the outcome was already rigged? If let's call them the league, the people who officiated the league, who controlled the league, had already decided in advance who's going to win the cup. What's the point of practicing and training, other than the joy of the experience itself? But there's very little joy in the experience of going to the Irish courts, right? So let's have a look now and see what we got. So as the title suggested here, what would Jesus do? Well, we do have an example, and again, at the risk of drawing in the religious aspect here inappropriately, it's not at all inappropriate when you look at the man Jesus. Okay, now whether you believe that he was God incarnate, whether he was the Messiah, whether he earned the right to be the Messiah by going through the travails in the desert and all the rest of it in the 18 missing years, whether or not he was specially prepared, I think everybody will agree on what we do know about him is that he was an extraordinary person. And again, just a standard painting here of Jesus standing in the court where he's being accused of blasphemy and so on. And the one thing I want to point out here is that however it is we see Jesus, the man, we surely must all agree and accept that he had a unusually profound and direct connection with the Almighty, with the source, with God, okay? Whatever name we want to use for it, okay? So Jesus had this direct connection. And then the question has to be asked, well, if a person has this direct connection with the divine, then who on earth, literally, has the right or the authority to supersede that direct connection? And you'll notice that Jesus's tactic in the courts, of course, he couldn't do anything about being physically manhandled, being taken away. He did escape threats on his life many times, even in the Bible accounts. Go in and look for them, guys. There's a number of accounts where the crowd gets angry, soldiers come to get him, this sort of stuff, and he slips quietly away, But you notice his tactic in court was to basically remain standing silently as the various lawyers and the rabbis and the priests, they were all conspiring together to do away with this troublemaker. And he was a troublemaker because he was a threat to the establishment, these authoritarian, tyrannical, despotic systems that we call human society. So if, as Jesus said, and we want to have a look now here at this saying, in the Lord's Prayer, Jesus, strangers, they said to him, Lord, teach us how to pray. And he says, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, where? On earth as it is in heaven. So what he's basically saying is, if you're going to pray, the best way to pray is to wish for God's kingdom to be here on earth, just as it is in heaven, whatever heaven is, or right? But he also says very strangely, if we look over to the left here, my kingdom is not of this world. Now we have to understand this, guys, because I'm operating on the understanding and the principle that there is such thing as, or at least a concept conceptually, the concept of the kingdom of heaven on earth, okay? But obviously on the left here, if Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world, what does he mean? And again, don't forget there are various translations of what was originally said in Aramaic or whatever language, and then the Greek translations, the Latin and all this sort of stuff. But my kingdom is not of this world. This is a reflection on, if you remember one of the temptations in the desert, where Satan says to Jesus, he shows him all of the kingdoms of the world. And he says to him, all you have to do, Jesus, is just bow down and acknowledge me, worship me, touch the forelock that I'm the prince of this world. And you can have a choice of anything you like. I'll give it all to you. You can have it all. But how can Satan give it all to anybody else if he doesn't already own it? Interesting, huh? So could it possibly be that the world he's talking about, this world, is the world that is dominated, sadly, by dark and evil forces, yeah? And even though we have our occasional moments of bliss and happiness It's all relative, guys. Look at the world in general, and you see all the wars, all the poverty, all the injustice, all of the despicable plans by the globalist elites to do us harm. You know, there's something fundamentally wrong here, and there are keys here that help us understand it. So, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. And so we, as normal humans, go, oh, Jesus wants a one world government with sort of God in charge, right? That seems to be the logical conclusion, because that's what we're used to. We're used to seeing kingdoms and empires and institutions and agencies and governments all around the world, and they all have a king figure at the top, don't they? The boss, the president, the king, the leader, whoever it might be, you know, the administrator, the department head, they all have this person at the top. The problem is that those kingdoms, unless the person at the top is literally God himself, right, or an absolute saint, you've got to question the quality of that authority. So we go back now to thinking about Jesus standing in the courts, right? He's directly connected to the source, to God, the Almighty, the deity, to Allah, whatever you want to call it. He's directly connected to that, and he's standing in front of people who are presuming to judge and have authority over him. And what he's really saying in his dignified, peaceful silence is, you haven't got any authority over me. You've got power. You've got physical power over me. You can flog me. You can drag me through the streets, and you can crucify me and kill me. But you have no authority over me, not true authority, right? And I hope I'm making this point here, guys. But I'm trying to also bring across the point that the kingdom that he's talking about is not what we think it is. In fact, as is said here in this quote, the kingdom of God is within you. Now, what does that, how could that possibly make any sense? What's the point of having a kingdom of God inside me if there's all of these demonic kingdoms outside of me that have the power and the force, the brute force, you know, armies, police, courts, prisons, despotic and diabolical politicians misusing the law, but basically that's what this comes down to, guys, because we've all got a personal choice. And when I'm talking about the Irish courts, I'm saying to people, if you know, and if there is proof already, as I showed in the book at the beginning, where is it? I've got a copy here. I showed in the book in the beginning, criminality in the Irish courts, here we go, and the absence of the rule of law. If there are 100 people whose names and photographs are in this book, which they are, I don't know if we can flick them through. There they are. There we are. Look, we've got all their photographs in the book, their positions they hold, the jobs they do, and the crimes they've committed. What sort of a fool are you or me to go back into a court in front of one of those rogues, those reprobates, these criminals, who are not what they're claiming to be? They're claiming to be public servants, but they're not serving the public. They're claiming to be judges who are independent and separate from the other branches of government, but they're not. They're claiming to be scrupulously wise and well-informed solicitors and barristers, for example, who are interpreting the law strictly according to their code of ethics, but they're not, are they? Some of the guards as well, and again, of course, I know some decent guards, but there are police out there, guards, that are acting out all of their bullying impulses and tactics, which is not service to the public, is it? Right? And they lie and on the stand in courts and all the rest, and the judges allow them to do it. None of them are actually properly fulfilling the roles that they claim to be fulfilling, which is, you know, human society's best attempts to create a fair and equitable democratic system of living. But none of these people that we're trusting to maintain the system are actually doing their jobs properly, you know? And this is a real problem, because if you go back to this concept that the kingdom of God is within you, then whether or not you're a guard, a solicitor, a civil servant, a politician, a judge, whatever, you know, these, or indeed a reporter with the news media, a person working for one of the big organizations, the question has to be asked, and it's a moral question, guys. The question has to be asked, are you answering Are you personally, am I personally answering to the God within me, the same as Jesus did? Okay. I know we've all got faults and failings and all the rest of it, but you just think about the concept. Am I answering to the authority within me that informs me? And this is your conscience. Now, some people don't have a very well developed conscience. Some people have allowed their consciences to wither by being part of the system. Some people have a stronger sense of conscience and soul and spirit and integrity and all that than others. And this is the point I'm trying to make, is that it belongs to all of us. Each of us are unique, but each of us has a right to connect directly to the source, directly to God. And again, I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not saying it's clear cut and you just go, oh, well, this is right and that's wrong. It's never that simple, because we live in a world where we're trained and conditioned to go along with much that is evil, even though we don't see it that way, and even though it's not labeled that way. Okay, but again, that's another discussion for another day. So to come back to this concept, so Jesus is standing in the courts. There are people who are unqualified to judge him. Why? Not because he wasn't a citizen of Palestine at the time, or he wasn't a Jew or whatever. No, because he was directly connected to the source of goodness, of godness. Okay. They had no right or authority over him. Now, once you start assuming that, and of course you can only do so if you truly invest in trying to do what is right, but once you know that you're right, in a simple, let's make a simple example. You're standing in a courtroom and a lawyer in opposition to you tells a lie, and you know it's a lie and he knows it's a lie. The judge might even know it's a lie. Why do you then continue to engage with that process? Because by doing so, you become complicit in the lie. What I would do, I'd say, stop just a minute, Mr. So-and-so, barrister. You've just spoken a mistruth. Judge, if that can be proven to be a deliberate mistruth here in court, that man needs to be sent down to the cells right now. Now, I know you might be saying, so what, the judges just ignore you, whatever. Well, they don't just ignore you. They might ultimately sort of try to ignore you, but you've raised something, especially in a public courtroom where people are listening. And people are listening to go, oh my God, listen to this Manning guy, giving this judge what for? This corrupt judge, or this lying barrister or solicitor or whatever, or guard, whatever it might be, a court service staff member, If he can do it, maybe we can do it as well. And in that sense, what I'd like people to understand is that the past, it's approaching 18 years now that we've had battles with the Irish establishment. And continuously, I've realized, belatedly, I didn't realize this at the beginning, but what in fact I've been doing on a personal level is establishing my authority as a child of God, not to answer or surrender to corrupt and arguably diabolical authority figures. And if that's the only message that comes out of the Integrity Ireland project, and it catches hold and flowers, if you like, in the minds and hearts of people who are being subjected to sometimes almost unbelievable abuses of authority and power by the people that we've either elected or that we are paying their wages or their obscene fees, as they literally make careers out of being liars and moral deviants, as I call them. Okay, so I think I made a good point on that, guys. Let's see now. I don't know what's coming in with the next slides, but as each does. Oh, yeah. So when I show you something like this, guys, sorry, I got the remnants of a bit of a cold here, guys. I apologize. I don't want to break the video because it's a continuous stream, This is pre-recorded, by the way, guys. It goes up as, quote, live because it's, it's a continuous stream. But yeah, I found this is, for the time being, this is the best way to do these. So when I do a slide like this, guys, and it requires a little bit of explanation, but what I'd like you to do is perhaps freeze the screen yourself once it comes up and, take a screenshot of it or whatever you need to do, or come back at it later and have a look at it and study it a little bit longer, because I put a lot of time into these in order to try and make clear these fundamental concepts. And I'm going to just change the icon on the top right for the moment, guys. You see this symbol on the top right? Okay, that symbol on the top right, I'm calling the original principle, or even the original universal principle. There's another name for it called the triadic archetype, but I don't want to confuse you too much. And very simply, what we're doing here is trying to bring this concept into the public consciousness, the original principle. Believe it or not, guys, and I know this is a massive and seemingly overconfident statement to make, but once you understand the originating principle, the original principle, this triadic archetype, once you understand it comprehensively, it actually provides the answers to almost all of our thematic problems in human society, almost all of them. All right, so it, loosely speaking, the original principle, it represents the white circle. There is the source, the origin, light, the deity, God, or whatever. And inside you have the yin-yang type concepts of feminine and masculine in that order. You'll notice the feminine blue is at the top and the masculine red is at the bottom. Again, no time to go into a lot of detail with that today, but I want you to look down here. This is a diagram I'm using to try and explain the fact that we are all trapped in an authoritarian system. It's a global system now, okay? And it operates from the top down, all right? Tyranny, dictatorships, fascism, despotism, autocracies, communism, totalitarianism, imperialism, colonialism, monarchism, government departments, believe it or not, corporate structures also, and organized crime, which actually, much like the criminality in the Irish courts book, can be said to be, criminality in the Irish courts, the absence of the rule of law, the subtitle, an expose of the workings of arguably the largest and most profitable publicly funded criminal organization in Ireland. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about the government, guys. Organized crime, interestingly, has to operate under this pyramid-like structure. So you have the boss, let's use the mafia as an example. And no, don't come and shoot me, guys. I'm just using you because you're famous. So the mafia, they have the Don, he's in charge, and there's a very strict hierarchy. And if you are part of that organization, it is clearly understood. If the boss tells you to do something, you do it, okay? Now, in order to get the protection of the association, you must be obedient to the authority figure in that organization. Often, that obedience requires you surrendering your own moral authority and your own personal integrity, your sense of conscience, your sense of right and wrong, because it's easier, it's more comfortable, it's less dangerous, it's less stressful. I'm just doing my job, etc., etc. I'm just driving the train to Auschwitz. And I want to make a strong point here, guys. We think we're all living in democracies. And first, I'll just, here on the left-hand side, you see concept, plan, and action. That equates also to the original principle. The concept, if it's good, the plan will be good. The action, the consequent action, and the outcome will also be good. But if the concept is bad, and here in the slide, I point out that inhumane values, if that is the concept, and there's a list of them on the left-hand side, usually rooted in money and profit and power, vices like greed, cruelty, exploitation, selfishness, and and so on and so forth. You can read them for yourself, guys. This is all to do with the character types that are most ambitious, that climb to the tops of these autocratic institutions, these pyramids, or at least scramble their way up. And in the process, they literally have to surrender their own morality, their own conscience, their own integrity, their right to claim to be a child of God. I'm sorry to say, it's a tough observation, guys, but if you think about it, it all makes sense. So I'm suggesting now we're locked into a global corporation. We're all participating as often as unwitting members of of these autocracies. And even if you think, and just to make one little point, guys, before we move on to the next slide, even if you think that you're living in a democracy, I just ask a simple question. Now, people might know that I ran for a national office a couple of times, not with any expectation or intention of actually getting elected, realistically, but it was a great opportunity to use the platform of the national elections to point out how corrupt the system was. Because at one time, before they took these privileges away, you got a couple of minutes on RTE, the television, the national television. You were obliged to be invited to local radio stations. You were obliged to be allowed a certain amount of time to speak, stuff like that. Most of that is gone now. They don't like the caliber and the quality of some of the candidates coming through now, and it's a threat to the system. So the system shut down those privileges, just like they do in the countries we like to denounce as being hotbeds of totalitarianism, like Russia and North Korea and Iran and places like that. We're no better, guys. We're absolutely no better. We just, the one thing that the Irish establishment seems to be the best in the world at is masking and camouflaging and deceiving others into believing that we live in a first world democracy. But is it a democracy? We have 2 or 3 days where we're allowed to vote. So arguably, yes, that's democratic. We get to pick who we elect. But in my own experience, guys, the first time I ran, 25% of my vote went missing. And they weren't big numbers, but 25% went missing and then got shared out with other candidates. And then the second time, 56% of my vote went missing. And it can be proven. We've done videos on this. We showed the charts. We showed the tally counts from the established parties that showed I had these votes. And all of a sudden, by the time the votes were counted, they had disappeared. And you have to ask yourself how and why this could happen, and how and why there wasn't an uproar in the government. And any candidate, popular or not, any candidate having their votes interfered with, it makes a nonsense of the whole system. But the question I'm posing here, guys, is ask yourself, once these people are in government, what happens? They immediately become subject to the party whip, to the boss of the political party, or to the trappings of government. Even the independents, the decent independents, are locked into these autocratic systems whereby they can only function as, look at the rules of the Dáil. You're not allowed to mention people by name. You're not allowed to do X, Y, and Z. And if you do, they've set up the system so that the Speaker of the House, so to speak, can have you evicted from the chamber, and 2 or 3 times that, and then you won't be allowed back in. In other words, you can't do what you've been elected to do because the system itself is designed to prevent that from happening. So you've got all of these autocratic systems within so-called democratic governments and institutions and organizations. But the systems within them, the government departments and everything, are all autocratic, and they all answer internally to a head. Yeah. And that's why at the moment, like you say, all of these senior civil servants and everything, even if a minister of integrity were to get elected and get in there and try to make changes, he'll soon find that he can't, because there's legal procedures in place. He can't fire these senior civil servants, many of whom are getting paid more than the minister is, because they're the ones who control these autocratic systems. Again, what would Jesus do? Where would you place Jesus in any one of these hierarchies? Because if he's in there at the bottom as a worker, in the red area down there, right? If he's in there as a worker, he's only going to do what he believes is right and true and honest. And if his managers or seniors in the organization, the agency, the business, whatever it is, the government department, say, right, Jesus, we need you to go and do X, Y, and Z. If Jesus doesn't think that's right, do you think he's going to do it? What happens to Jesus then? Well, he gets kicked out. It becomes increasingly more difficult to be part of these autocratic systems the more personal integrity that you have. So please think about it, guys, and go away and look at this. Now, come back now to the Irish Times. Chief Justice warns against taking independent court system for granted. The reason I've brought this article up, guys, I'm just, again, making a point. Okay, I'm making a really, hopefully a very valid, very strong point without rambling on too much. The Chief Justice is a man called Donal O'Donnell, right? He has been facing criminal charges up in, that's him there on the right, up in the CCJ since 2019. The court system does not function the way it claims it does. Literally, these people are put in positions where they are beyond the law. Now, we're using the law to hold him to account for criminal activities he's committed in the courts. The court service is refusing to process the paperwork. Well, they're not refusing, they're just stonewalling, gaslighting, and all these other cheap and cowardly tricks that they deploy in order to protect the system and the people. The higher people are embedded in the system, the more protection they can assume that they're going to get. The other point I'm making here is this wonderful looking creature on the left. In these gender confusion days, I hesitate to point out the fact that she is apparently a woman. Her name is Mary Carolyn. Okay, now why is this important? Well, because first of all, as we said earlier, the courts are not independent. They're in lockstep with the political establishment, and you can be absolutely sure that what the politicals are telling them in private at their golf clubs or in their, wherever it is that they hobnob and mingle out of the public view, they know what they're expected to do. They know which activists that have got to be removed from the scene, which Burkes or Kevin Taylors or Joe Ducey's or Steve Kerr's or myself. And, of course, the list could go on and on and on and on. Anybody who's ruffling the system, threatening their insidious incomes, and their so-called path to success. They think it's success, and they don't realize that they're frog marching themselves straight into hell, and they don't even know it. And that's the tragedy. The trouble is the system has been set up that way. So Mary Carolyn here was she was elevated to the position of legal affairs correspondent for the Irish Times after she produced this particular article. There's her name down there. This was done in 2021, May the 18th, 2021, just a week from now, the anniversary of that, a few years ago, 3 years ago. And very simply, for those of you that aren't aware of what's going on, this is Judge Michael McGrath on the right, another criminal who is serving up in the CCJ at the moment. Attempts to have him held to account. Oh, the DPP has decided not to prosecute. Why not? Oh, she's given no reason for her decisions. Really? Can we have that in writing? Click, phone goes down, right? So that was the guards informing us that this guy, Michael McGrath on the right, was not going to be prosecuted despite abundant evidence of fraud, deception, and lots of violations of his oath of office, his code of conduct, all right? Mary Carolyn put out an article that day in so many words. As you can see the heading, the man's bid to halt a trial over incident at court office is an abusive process. They eventually jailed me for this alleged incident that never even happened. But in the meantime, she reported on this. So anybody reading this article assumes that Judge Michael McGrath had held a hearing in my case. Now, I was the plaintiff, I was the applicant in this case. So in other words, no hearings can be held unless I'm there. It's as simple as that. It'd be like having the cup final and one team hasn't been told that it's on, and the other team just runs rampant on the field, scores 45 goals, and declares themselves the winner. And they put an article, Man United won the cup by 26 goals to 0, and but they failed to mention the fact that their opponents, Manchester City or whatever, weren't even told that the match was going ahead. What a nonsense that would make, wouldn't it? Except, not only was I not told that the hearing was going ahead, but it never actually happened. We have a recording of a senior court service staff member telling us that Justice Michael McGrath, High Court judge over there, a barrister, previously a barrister and a lecturer at university, that he wasn't even at the High Court that day. So, and here you have this Mary Carolyn. Let's go back to her for a second so you all get a good look at her face. Mary Carolyn, hope you're proud of yourself, dearie. Yeah, I told you that nefarious activities would cost you. All right. At the very least, you and your colleagues and everyone will hear about this. You are a disgrace to the legal profession. An absolute shocking and pathetic disgrace. And if you don't like what I'm saying, you know, I've already tried to lodge papers against you in the Irish Times for what you did. And what happened? I get told, believe it or not, guys, I turned up we had some friends with us on the day, maybe about 20, 25 friends with us. And we went to the offices of the Irish Times to serve defamation papers on them for this article. And for not this article, the next one. And found out on a Tuesday afternoon at about 2:30 in the afternoon, according to the security personnel who wouldn't identify themselves at the gates, there wasn't a single employee of the Irish Times, and Lord knows how many there are in there, a couple of hundred, I would imagine, at least. Not a single employee. All we needed was flipping cleaner or someone to come out to us and accept the papers on behalf of the the board of directors. There wasn't a single one of them that they said in the building at 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon to accept the papers. Guys, you know what? After a while, you realize what's the best option here. Just stand quietly and look at them with contempt, just like Jesus would, you know. So to move on to the article, I'm not going to go in. Again, I'll pull it up for a second, guys. Anybody wants to freeze it and look at the individual lies. But those red rings indicate mistruths or direct lies by Chief Justice Donal O'Donnell, the most senior judge in Ireland, a man to be trusted. Yes, you think so? So this is it. You can freeze it and take your time, go through it, guys. I'm not going to break down every single thing, but I just circled them all as I read through it. For God's sake, this is unbelievable. The things that they say, how the independence of the courts and how we have to trust this and blah, 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 blah. It's all lies, guys. How many lies, Mary and Donal, yeah, before you're satisfied that you've done your service to the diabolical system. Yes. Bow down and worship me and I'll give you all of this. Well done, guys. So meanwhile, I'm conscious of the time here, my friends. What are we looking at here? Oh, yes. Can't keep up with the Fine Gael departures. Here's a roundup of who is standing down. Again, articles in the newspaper, a whole slew of politicians are declaring they are not going to stand for election in the upcoming elections. Now, on the one hand, this is really wonderful news because a lot of them they're just the worst examples of humanity. All that they're good at is talking into a camera and looking confident while they lie through their teeth. It's second nature, or first nature to them, guys, all right? Many of them are sociopaths and psychopaths. And again, look into this. I do a lot of videos now trying to explain people what this means. But sociopaths and psychopaths are people who do not care about other people, simply put. They care about themselves and their own ambitions, and they will crush or destroy or eliminate or ignore or sideline anybody who gets in their way. All right. And that's why they want positions in public office, because that's one of the easiest places to garnish for oneself all of the power and wealth and accolades and public glory that would otherwise be denied to them, as people recognize them for who and what they really are, and send them off to an island without a boat to get off it and leave them there to fight it out amongst themselves. So, let's see, what was the next one? Oh, yeah. So why is this important? Well, here we go. I wanted to make a point of Mr. Simon Harris, who has basically been coronated. And I know this is a little bit old news now in the sense that it's a few weeks old. But if you can read the article in the Constitution there, it is very, very explicit and exact. If the Taoiseach at any time resigns from office, the other members of the government shall be deemed also to have resigned from office. But the Taoiseach and the other members of the government shall continue to carry on their duties until their successors shall have been appointed. Now, I know everybody has made their comments about this. Obviously, there should have been a general election. Varadkar on the left suddenly announces, oh, I'm going to step down and let people who are better than me to take over. Sure, we believe you, Leo. You know, thousands wouldn't, but we will believe you because you're just such an honest guy, aren't you? Yeah. French kissing is some guy in a nightclub, whilst he's supposed to have a permanent partner, and he's caught French kissing some complete stranger. I mean, the Taoiseach of Ireland in a gay nightclub, sucking face with some guy. The lack of respect for his own partner, let alone himself or the Irish public, is just so evident. But why should that surprise us? So anyway, so there's Simon Harris now on the right. He's been crowned the new Taoiseach, and he's going to do whatever damage he's going to do to the country until we remove him. But why am I making this point, guys? Well, what I want to do is point out, and here's Simon Coveney, who many people would have thought would have been a shoe-in for the next Taoiseach, given his ability to lie and deceive and double deal as well, you know, perfectly qualified. But whose tune are they really dancing to, guys? And I've got Klaus Schwab here in the middle, the World Economic Forum. Look at the logo. The fact that there's a line running through the 3 zeros to create a 666 is not silliness. It's not inadvertent symbolism, guys. This is riddled with important meaning. If you understand the symbolism, we go back up to the top right there, the original universal principle. Once you understand what this symbolism means, and I'm doing talks on this now, guys, and I'm doing videos on it, please pay attention. There's one very long video that you'll get on the Jesse Hall show, The Missing Link. If you're interested, guys, just put in my name, Stephen Manning, interview 666 with Jesse Hall, and up will come. And it's a long one, guys. It's about 4 hours long, but it explains all of the satanic symbolism and how it's being manifested in our world today. But basically, Simon Coveney here, just like a lot of his colleagues, jumps to the tune of the Puppet Master. Okay, and we need to be fully aware of this, guys. These guys are not there for us. All right, they're not there for us. They're there for their puppet masters. Now here I have again. Here's Helen McEntee. My God, how on earth that woman is still in office? I just don't get it, guys. I don't get it. So anyway, apparently some naughty protesters turned up at Mr. Harris's home to make a lawful demonstration or a protest of some sort. And oh dear, this is terrible. And, you know, thuggery and thugs, far-right thugs who target politicians' homes. Well, I want to make a point here. First of all, Sinn Féin came out and stood by his side. Now, I haven't got the slide of that, guys, but you can trust me on it. Sinn Féin came out and stood by his side at the microphone, as they've got to now, because, oh, well, we're all in this together, guys, and it'll be your houses next. And they stood next to him and said, oh, this is appalling and it shouldn't happen and we think it's shocking. And really, and similarly, only a few months ago, I believe, and a colleague now, Mick, the Irish Git, and no, I'm not insulting him, that's his own chosen moniker, but Mick pointed out in one of his things, and there's a picture of him at the end of this presentation, so you can go and check it out for yourself. He pointed out that that's precisely what Sinn Féin activists were doing to sitting politicians' homes some months back. And he's got pictures up of it, they're there. So when it's Sinn Féin activists doing it, oh, that's all right. But when it's ordinary members of the public, oh, now they're suddenly far-right thugs and they're putting the whole of the establishment in danger, and it's unacceptable. And no doubt we'll have to cook up some new laws, because we can do that, you know, to make sure that we don't have our, you know, our nighttime glass of brandy disturbed by these, the public, the peasantry, turning up and complaining that we're treating them all with contempt, which is exactly what they are doing. Now, the main point I wanted to work out, guys, I wanted to make here was, so my position, as you've guessed already, is absolutely we should be targeting politicians' homes. Now, if they can constitute that to be hate speech, now I'm not saying hate speech. I'm saying if you can identify a crime that's been committed by a politician or somebody in public service. Now, this runs all the way from guards to civil servants, court service staff, or anything like that. We were advocating this in the book here, which is called The Integrity Ireland S.O.S. Guide, Saving Our State. Okay, I've got a copy of it here. It's a substantial tome, as they say, and it's still very much pertinent, my friends, to I don't know why it's gone blue there. Oh yeah, it's very much pertinent to, let's see if I can do it this way, to the to what's going on today. It's our best attempt at a lay litigant's guide at a time when we believed that if you knew enough about the law and the structures of the system and how they work, that and using this book, you'd have a very good chance of defending yourself against corrupt judges, lawyers, guards, court service staff, and so on. As you can see, 360 odd pages. It's full of forms and stuff you can use at the back. That's written on the back. Had enough of corruption, yeah, deliberately, so that when you're sitting in court with this big A4 size book, 360 pages that you slam down with a nice loud thump, accidentally, of course, make sure the judge looks over and he sees the back of the book. Yeah, all right. And of course, the front with the Integrity Ireland logo. Let them know that you've got support, that you're an astute individual. You're not to be taken for a complete fool. Okay, but I'd just like to read out the suggestions we were making at the time, and I'll just breeze through them, guys. Record everything and document everything. 2, never go to illegal appointments, guard interviews or court appearances alone, and again, record, even if you have to do so secretly. Don't forget the recording thing. Judges will tell you it's against the law. It's not against the law. It's against court rules that they're telling you is the law. All right. The law supersedes court rules. All right. It's their way of conveniently protecting the data so that nobody. So if they decide to delete files, yes, we got proof of that. To erase recordings of DAR, yes, we got proof of that. To alter transcripts, yes, we've got proof of that. Or judges saying, oh, I'm the data controller and I'm just not going to release the information. Yes, we've got proofs of that. And ultimately, of course, forcing you to pay money and make applications to a court, which is all funding the system in order to simply get the truth of what happened in a hearing you were at. No, not good enough. Not good enough, guys. We've got to realize that you're dealing with crooks and you're dealing with people, even at the lower ranks, at best, are inadvertently serving a crooked system. And you treat them with the respect they deserve. You don't be rude to them, but you say to them, look, this is what I understand. You don't realize the judge that you're working for is an absolute toe rag. He's a criminal thing, or your boss in the court service, or your superintendent here. And you need to know that by following out their instructions, you are complicit in criminal activity. Know the Constitution, especially the articles concerning your fundamental rights. Advertise the fact that you're a member of or a supporter of Integrity Ireland, blah, blah, blah. Use the documents in the book. If you are wronged by an authority figure, where appropriate, take immediate direct action. Do not delay. Delay plays into their hands. Make, where are we? I just make myself appear here. Make a written complaint to the head of their organization, firm, or agency. Lodge a criminal complaint statement with the Gardaí. This is all piling up the shame and the embarrassment and the exposure, guys, because ultimately they rarely get held to account by the system itself. So what we do is we create our own system of accountability. Publicity, publicity, publicity. Notify the subject using the forms that a criminal complaint has been lodged. In the case of legal professionals, notify their professional indemnity insurers that a criminal complaint has been lodged with the authorities. Notify the court service, the Law Society, the Garda Commissioner, the Minister for Justice of the same. Then invoice the wrongdoer for your time and costs. If they fail or refuse to pay, lodge a claim in the small claims or the civil courts. Number 9, consider placing a commercial lien on the personal property. Again, it's all pressure, guys. Use the Common Informer legislation, which I'll hold up briefly for you here, guys. The Common Informer legislation, that's this book here, which explains a one-day process that you can actually prosecute people in the courts without going to the guards, without engaging solicitors, etc., etc. Report them to the database. We're not discontinued that, guys. It's still there, but we don't have the administrative faculties to keep that going or to promote the videos at the moment, but do it for yourself. Canvass their neighborhood with notification flyers of their illicit activities. And finally, number 14, picket their homes or businesses. Now, the reason we're saying this, guys, is back in 2015, we were advising people how to do this. And all you need to do this efficiently and effectively, I'm watching the time here, we're down to the last 10 minutes. All you need to do this efficiently and effectively is a handful of people. You don't need big crowds. You certainly don't need to announce it in advance. All you have to do is say 7 people, 7 to a dozen people. You meet at a given location. You get in 2 or 3 vehicles. Keep it simple. You don't want a huge convoy. 2 or 3 vehicles. Go to the nominated target's home or place of work or business. If it's their home, you go to, let's say, 7 houses either side of where they live. All right. That's all. You have prepared leaflets and you just put them through the letterboxes, advising everybody who's their neighbors or local businesses, if it's a case of a business, that you're serving these papers on an individual who's committed these crimes. Make sure you've got your facts right, of course, you know. Then you set up the camera outside their house, and one of your nominated people goes up to the house to serve the notifications on them that they're criminals, that they're a disgrace to the system and the locality and the business they're involved in, blah, 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 blah. And have the camera perhaps turned away from the front door in case somebody else answers the door other than the subject, so as you can't get accused of, you know, embarrassing a wife or children or something like that. But if nobody answers, and by then, of course, the guards are being called or whatever, this whole thing could be over and done with in a few minutes. By the time the guards arrive with the sirens blaring and everything, and you just simply say, "What's the matter, Sergeant, you know, or Inspector? We've just had a private, short, lawful demonstration and a protest of the criminality that person in there is committing against the Irish people. And we're leaving now. Thank you, but unless you guys want to say something on camera and be part of this noble ethical protest, you know." So I just wanted to point this out. We were telling people to do this back in 2015. That advice still stands. And as long as it's lawful and as long as it's done with, you know, the facts, you can prove that crimes are being committed by these people, yes, absolutely, they should be held to account so that they can't continue their crimes with impunity. Now, let's see, guys, we've got to run through the last few pretty quickly. Could Leo Varadkar face a future inquiry into his role with the World Economic Forum? Why am I putting this up here, guys? Well, again, it's because it's important that everybody understands Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum, okay? And there's a little text here. This is the Irish channel. By all means, check them out, guys, and subscribe to them, because these are people who are telling the truth. Varadkar's connection to the World Economic Forum and its Young Global Leaders program has raised questions, serious questions, about potential conflicts of interest, given his position as Taoiseach in the past. Go ahead, guys, and read the whole thing for yourself. I'm conscious that I'm short on time here. It basically says, can we trust that he had the interests of the public at heart when he's been trained in a program that not only he has gone through, but also, there they are, sorry, also all of these people. Now, this is in the UK, guys. Again, freeze the screen, read through, and here's Klaus Schwab at the top. What we are very proud of is that we penetrate the global cabinets of countries with our young global leaders. That was said in 2017 by Klaus Schwab. These are all of the UK's. Look at them. There's 2 or 3 former prime ministers there, Cameron Brown and Tony Blair. Then you've got all of these other people, look, prominent leaders. Okay, who else should we be looking at? Here's another few of them. Emmanuel Macron, Boris Johnson, you know, Justin Trudeau, and Jacinta Ardern in New Zealand, and Kingmaker Klaus. Yeah, again, thank you for the pictures, the sources I get them from. Okay, but why should all this bother us? Well, let's look at a few more of them. Yeah, here we go again. Trudeau, Varadkar, Ardern, Johnson, Joseph Biden, Emmanuel Macron, Scott Morrison, I think he's Australian, Merkel from Germany, and Naftali Bennett from Israel. Why should this bother us, guys? Well, it's a pretty simple, you know, 2 and 2 equals 4 conclusion. If all of these people are in an elite private club that meets behind closed doors and who has tentacles of control reaching into the World Health Organization, the United Nations, and to all of our national governments who have any clout or importance, and then we find out that most of these people are unethical, unscrupulous, amoral, and are, you know, have ambitions because they're largely sociopaths and psychopaths. They have ambitions that do not include loving one's neighbor and all that sort of stuff. That's what we need to be very much alert and aware about. Okay. Oh yes, now a little commentary here on the asylum seekers from unsafe countries will be processed through fast track system. Great. Well, what's wrong with this is the document here, and again, I think it was my friend Mick, the Irish Git, who came up with this. Well, Helen, you know, our governments are degenerate. That did say our governments are degenerate liars, because they're talking about you know, fast tracking migrants processed into the system. We all know the you know, the chaos that's unfolding in Ireland with all of these undocumented migrants, most of them military-aged men. What is it, 87% of them military-aged men? And nobody seems to think this is unusual or this is odd. But then you find out Derek Byrne, who signed this particular document, all right, and the document is basically confirming that there's an active sponsored government program to do, and whilst they're pretending to the public that they are, you know, overwhelmed by this unexpected influx of migrants. No, liars, liars, liars. There's an active scheme here, and the scheme is actually set up. You can see it there just about at the bottom, undocumented migrant scheme, right? You got it there. I put it in, undocumented scheme unit, Ireland. It's actually a government unit who was set up to deal with this, all right? If it's all accidental and inadvertent, well, why have we got the head of the department, Derek Byrne, signing off on these letters? We're being lied to on a persistent, consistent, daily basis, guys. Last few slides, guys, got to be quick. Demonstrations, guys. Now, the only thing I'm asking and making a point of here is, yes, the demonstrations, absolutely, we have to do them, because if nothing else, they are locations where we can all meet and discuss and make friends and share opinions and energize each other to actually confront the powers that be, all right? So I'm all for it, but also be alert to the fact that that's the main objective here. And to also show the lies in the mainstream media, which say, 300 people turned out, when in fact it was, you know, 15,000. And you can see that. Hi, Danny. You're on camera. All right, Danny. Yeah, my son, my wonderful son there in the background. All right, I'm almost finished, Danny. Only 2 more minutes, okay? Yes, Dad. Good lad, and then I'll feed you. Good lad. But the point I wanted to make with this picture, guys, was, and I'm just asking a rhetorical question. Why did everybody stop? Just because the guards put up a bunch of barriers across the road? Unless that was a block into private property, everybody in that cortege, in that demonstration, had the right to, and I say it now again, no malice involved in here, but to very gently say to the guards, loudspeaker guards, please stand aside. We're walking on public property. You don't have a right to stop us. It's a peaceful assembly. And you move the barriers aside and force them, if they have to assault you, and then you go after them using the common informer. Almost done, guys. All right, we've got to finish this now in the next minute. Let's see the last couple of slides really quick. There's Mick, the Irish Git. Please, ladies and gentlemen, look it up. This is his document he discovered, the Policing, Security and Community Safety Act 2024, which basically allows the Irish government, this has been slipped in again without our knowledge, guys, it allows the Irish government to co-opt police from Northern Ireland to bring them down here to do stuff. And on top of that, we now know as well that the police, the Garda Síochána, are actively recruiting in mosques around Ireland and in countries like Pakistan directly. They're directly recruiting for Muslim men of the right age to become members of Garda Síochána. Nothing on the face of it wrong with that until you start adding up the dots and, you know, do some thinking for yourself, guys. Very last minute, the last slide. Yes, here we have in County Mayo, quick shout out to Steve Kerr and Joe Ducey, both of whom are running for the local council. It's time that we got some honest people in running local events, guys. Honesty matters. I'll pull that up. That's my final slide for today, guys. God bless you all. Thank you for your kindness, your support. And yeah, one by one together, we can make a difference. God bless you.